Officer Jake Rodriguez had been patrolling the streets of Cedar Grove for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for the life-changing moment that would unfold in his own backyard. It was a crisp Tuesday morning in early September when he first heard the sound that would become the soundtrack to his daily routine, the delighted squeal of a 3-year-old discovering pure magic. "Puppy, big puppy." The voice carried over the 6-foot chain-link fence that separated his modest ranch-style home from the Thompson family's cheerful yellow house next door. Jake paused in the middle of brushing Duke's thick German Shepherd coat, watching as his 4-year-old canine partner's ears perked up with curiosity. Duke was not just any dog. Weighing in at 95 pounds of muscle and intelligence, he was trained in narcotics detection, suspect apprehension, and crowd control. His intimidating presence had sent countless criminals running, and his keen nose had uncovered thousands of dollars worth of illegal substances during traffic stops. Duke was all business, serious, focused, and professionally distant from civilians. That's what made what happened next so extraordinary. A tiny face appeared through one of the diamond-shaped openings in the fence, complete with wild curly hair, chocolate brown eyes, and the biggest smile Jake had ever seen. Little Lily Thompson had just discovered that her new neighbor wasn't just a police officer. He lived with the most magnificent creature she had ever laid eyes on. "Hi, doggy," Lily called out, pressing her entire face against the fence until the metal left impressions on her cheeks. "What's your name? Are you nice? Do you like cookies?" Jake expected Duke to do what he always did with strangers, acknowledge them with a brief glance, and then return to whatever task was at hand. Police dogs were trained to be friendly, but not overly social with the public. They were working animals first, pets second. Instead, Duke dropped his usual professional demeanor entirely. The massive German Shepherd trotted directly to the fence, sat down with perfect posture, and tilted his head as if genuinely considering Lily's rapid-fire questions. His tail began a gentle, rhythmic wag, something Jake rarely saw outside of their home. "Well, hello there," Jake called out, walking over to join this impromptu introduction. "I'm Officer Jake, and this is Duke. He's usually pretty shy around new people." Lily's mother, Sarah Thompson, appeared behind her daughter, clearly embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," she said, gently pulling Lily back from the fence. She just moved here from her grandparents' farm, and she's never seen a police dog before. "Lily, honey, leave the nice officer alone." No, it's perfectly fine," Jake assured her, surprised by his own words. He was typically private about his home life, preferring to keep work and personal boundaries clear. But something about the pure joy radiating from this little girl was impossible to resist. Duke seems pretty interested in meeting her too. As if to prove Jake's point, Duke moved closer to the fence and gently pressed his black nose through one of the openings. Lily giggled with absolute delight, carefully extending one tiny finger to touch the dog's nose. The moment their skin made contact, something magical happened. Duke's usually alert and serious expression softened completely, and he made a low, gentle rumbling sound that Jake had never heard before. "He likes you," Jake found himself saying, amazed by his partner's reaction. Duke doesn't usually warm up to people this quickly. Lily bounced on her toes with excitement. "Really? He really likes me? Duke, do you want to be my friend?" She turned to her mother with pleading eyes. "Mommy, can Duke be my friend? Please, please, please?" Sarah looked apologetically at Jake. "I'm sorry. She gets very excited about animals. We had to leave her dog at her grandparents' farm when we moved here for my husband's job. Duke would love to be your friend," Jake heard himself saying, wondering where these words were coming from. In all his years as a K-9 officer, he had never encouraged civilian interaction with Duke outside of official demonstrations. "Maybe we could arrange some proper introductions." Over the next few minutes, Jake learned that the Thompson family had just moved to Cedar Grove from rural Montana. Lily's father, Michael, was a software engineer who had accepted a position with a local tech company. Sarah was a freelance graphic designer who worked from home. They had specifically chosen this quiet neighborhood because of its reputation for safety and community spirit. Lily has been having a hard time adjusting, Sarah confided quietly while her daughter continued chatting with Duke through the fence. She misses her grandparents' farm terribly, especially their old golden retriever, Buster. This is the first time I've seen her genuinely happy since we moved. Jake watched as Lily began telling Duke about her stuffed animal collection, holding up her worn elephant toy for him to see. Duke listened with the same attention he gave during official briefings, occasionally offering a soft woof that sent Lily into fresh peals of laughter. "You know what?" Jake said, making a decision that would change all their lives. "How about Duke and I stop by every morning around 7? We usually do our physical training in the backyard anyway. Lily could say hello while we exercise." Sarah's face lit up with gratitude. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose on your routine." "Trust me," Jake replied, watching Duke gently accept a dandelion that Lily had picked and pushed through the fence. "I think this is going to be good for all of us." As Jake and Duke headed inside to prepare for their shift, he couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was the beginning of something extraordinary. Duke kept looking back at the fence, where Lily remained pressed against the metal, waving enthusiastically. "See you tomorrow, Duke," she called out. "I'll have more flowers for you." For the first time in his career, Jake found himself actually looking forward to tomorrow morning, not because of the work ahead, but because of a 3-year-old girl who had somehow seen past Duke's intimidating exterior to discover the gentle heart that beat beneath his professional training. Neither Jake nor Duke could have imagined that this simple fence-line friendship would soon become the most important relationship of their lives, teaching them both lessons about love, courage, and the extraordinary power of an innocent heart. The next morning at exactly 6:58 a.m., Jake found himself checking his watch with an anticipation he hadn't felt since his rookie days on the force. He had always been punctual, but today carried a different energy. Duke seemed to sense it too, pacing restlessly by the back door and whining softly, behavior completely out of character for the usually disciplined German Shepherd. "All right, buddy, let's go see if our new friend shows up," Jake said, clipping Duke's training leash to his collar. The moment they stepped onto the back patio, a familiar voice rang out across the yard. "Duke! Duke! You came back!" Lily's excited squeal could probably be heard 3 houses down. She was already stationed at the fence, still wearing her pajamas. A bright pink set covered in cartoon unicorns, with her wild curls barely contained by a lopsided ponytail. Clutched in her arms was the same worn elephant from yesterday, now joined by what appeared to be half her stuffed animal collection. Duke's transformation was immediate and remarkable. The moment he spotted Lily, his professional posture melted away. His tail began wagging so hard his entire back end wiggled, and he made a beeline straight for the fence. Jake had to quicken his pace just to keep up with his eager partner. "Good morning, Lily," Jake called out, genuinely surprised by how glad he was to see the little girl's beaming face. "I see you brought some friends today. This is Mr. Peanuts," Lily announced solemnly, holding up her elephant. "And this is Princess Sparkles, and Baby Bear, and, oh, this is Captain Whiskers." She struggled to display each stuffed animal through the fence opening, providing Duke with a full introduction to her menagerie. Duke sat perfectly still, allowing Lily to press each toy against his nose for his official approval. His patience was extraordinary. The same dog who could track suspects for miles without losing focus was now sitting statue still while a 3-year-old conducted a stuffed animal parade. Sarah appeared on the back porch, coffee mug in hand and a warm smile on her face. "Sorry, Officer Rodriguez?" She's been awake since 5:30, asking when Duke would come outside. I finally gave up on getting her back to sleep. "Please, call me." "Jake," he replied, settling into what he sensed would become their daily routine. "And don't apologize." Duke was pacing by the door at 6:45. I think he was just as eager as she was. What happened next would become the foundation of the most extraordinary friendship Jake had ever witnessed. Lily began her morning report to Duke, speaking in the serious, confidential tone that only small children could master when sharing life's most important information. "Duke, guess what happened yesterday after you left?" Lily whispered, pressing her face close to the fence. "Mommy made pancakes that looked like butterflies, but I think they looked more like blobs." "Don't tell." Her eyes said that, okay? It's our secret. Duke tilted his head attentively, occasionally offering a soft woof of acknowledgement. Jake watched in amazement as his partner, trained to detect lies, track criminals, and face dangerous situations without flinching, listened with complete focus to a toddler's rambling commentary about cartoon shows and imaginary tea parties. "And then," Lily continued, her voice dropping to an even more conspiratorial whisper, "I had a scary dream about monsters under my bed. But you know what? I pretended you were there, and the monsters got scared of you instead. You're the bravest dog in the whole world, Duke." Something shifted in Duke's expression at those words. The big dog moved even closer to the fence, gently pressing his nose through the opening until it almost touched Lily's cheek. It was as if he understood that this little girl saw him not as an intimidating police dog, but as her protector and confidant. Jake felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. In all his years of partnership with Duke, he had never seen this side of his K-9 companion. Duke was revealing a capacity for gentleness and emotional connection that went far beyond his professional training. "Officer Jake," Lily said, suddenly turning her attention to him with the directness that only children possessed. "Does Duke have dreams too? Because I think he should dream about chasing balls and eating ice cream and playing with all the nice kids." "I think Duke has very good dreams," Jake replied, surprised by the emotion in his own voice. "Especially now that he has such a wonderful friend to think about." The morning ritual expanded as the days passed. Sarah began bringing her coffee outside to watch what she dubbed the Fence Line Chronicles, often joined by other neighbors who had heard about the unusual friendship. Mrs. Chun from 2 houses down started timing her morning walks to coincide with the show, and even gruff Mr. Peterson, the retired military veteran who lived across the street, found excuses to water his front garden during Duke and Lily's morning meetings. But the most remarkable development was Duke's growing vocabulary of responses. He began offering different types of barks and whines that seemed specifically tailored to Lily's various stories. A soft woof for approval, a gentle whine for sympathy when she talked about missing her grandparents, and an excited series of barks when she described upcoming adventures like trips to the zoo or visits from cousins. Jake started arriving for their morning sessions 15 minutes early, just to witness the pure magic of their interaction. He began bringing his own coffee outside, finding that starting his day with this dose of innocent joy made everything else, the difficult cases, the dangerous calls, the weight of his responsibilities, seem more manageable. One particular morning, as autumn painted the neighborhood trees in brilliant oranges and reds, Lily made an announcement that would cement their bond forever. "Duke," she said with the utmost seriousness, "I've decided something very important. You're not just my friend anymore. You're my very best friend in the whole wide world. And best friends take care of each other forever and ever, right?" Duke's response was immediate and unmistakable. He sat up tall, placed one massive paw against the fence where Lily's small hand was pressed on the other side, and gave a single definitive bark that sounded remarkably like a promise. Jake knew, in that moment, that he was witnessing something far more profound than a simple friendship between a child and a dog. He was seeing the birth of a connection that would soon teach an entire community about the transformative power of unconditional love. October 15th started like any other morning in the Thompson-Rodriguez routine, except for one glaring absence that sent ripples of unease through both households. At 6:58 a.m., Jake stepped onto his back patio with Duke, both of them automatically, looking toward the familiar spot by the fence where Lily's bright voice usually greeted them with infectious enthusiasm. Silence. Duke's ears perked up, scanning the Thompson backyard with the same intensity he used when tracking suspects. He paced along the fence line, whining softly, a sound Jake had never heard from his partner during their morning routine. The German shepherd stopped at their usual meeting spot, sat down, and stared at the empty space where Lily's small hands typically appeared through the chain-linked diamonds. "Maybe she's sleeping in today, buddy," Jake said, but his voice carried uncertainty. In the 6 weeks since their friendship had begun, Lily had never missed a morning greeting. Even when she'd had a slight cold the previous week, she had appeared in her bathrobe, sniffling but determined not to disappoint Duke. Jake went through the motions of their usual training routine, but his heart wasn't in it. Duke's performance was equally distracted. The dog kept glancing toward the Thompson house, his attention fractured in a way that would have been concerning if they'd been on duty. Something was definitely wrong. By evening, Jake's concern had transformed into genuine worry. He had seen Sarah's car leave twice during the day, unusual for someone who typically worked from home. The house had an eerily quiet quality that seemed to press against the neighborhood's usual cheerful atmosphere. At 7:30 p.m., Jake made a decision that went against his usual policy of respecting neighbors' privacy. He walked to the Thompsons' front door and knocked, Duke beside him, sensing the gravity of the moment. Sarah answered the door, and Jake's stomach dropped. Her usually bright eyes were red-rimmed and swollen from crying. Her hair, normally neat and styled, hung in disheveled strands around her face. She looked like someone who had received the kind of news that changes everything forever. "Oh, Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was wondering when you'd come by. Lily kept asking about Duke today. Is everything okay?" Jake asked, though the answer was written all over Sarah's devastated expression. Sarah's composure crumbled completely. "No," she sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "Nothing is okay. Nothing will ever be okay again." Jake stepped forward instinctively, and Sarah collapsed against him, her body shaking with the force of her grief. Duke pressed close to both of them, his warm presence offering silent comfort as Sarah's tears soaked through Jake's uniform shirt. "The bruises," Sarah whispered between sobs. "We thought she was just being clumsy, you know? 3-year-olds fall down all the time." But they kept appearing, and she was so tired. She would fall asleep in the middle of playing, which isn't like her at all. And yesterday, she could barely lift her head from her pillow. Jake's blood ran cold. He had seen enough in his years of police work to recognize the terrible direction this conversation was heading. "The doctor ran blood tests," Sarah continued, her voice breaking on every word. "Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Our baby has cancer, Jake. Our perfect, beautiful, innocent little girl has cancer." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He tightened, his arms around Sarah, feeling utterly helpless in the face of such devastating news. Duke seemed to sense the gravity of the moment too, pressing closer and making soft, comforting sounds. "Where is she now?" Jake asked gently. "At Children's Hospital with Michael," Sarah replied. "They started her first round of chemotherapy today." "She was so scared, Jake. She kept asking for Duke. She wanted to know if he was wondering where. She was. Jake felt his heart break into 1,000 pieces. The image of brave little Lily, who faced imaginary monsters in her dreams by pretending Duke was there to protect her, now facing real monsters in a hospital bed, was almost too much to bear. "She's going to beat this," Jake said with fierce determination, surprised by the strength in his own voice. "Lily is the strongest, bravest kid I've ever met. And she's got more people rooting for her than she knows." Sarah pulled back to look at him, hope flickering in her tear-filled eyes. "You really think so?" "I know so," Jake replied. "That little girl has Duke wrapped around her finger, and Duke has never been wrong about people. If he believes in someone, they're going to be just fine." As if understanding every word, Duke moved to the front window and pressed his nose against the glass, staring in the direction of the hospital, as if he could somehow send his love and strength across the distance. To his small friend. "Sarah," Jake said, an idea forming in his mind, "Duke is certified as a therapy dog through the police department. We've never used those skills, but would Lily like some visitors at the hospital?" Sarah's eyes widened with the first genuine smile Jake had seen from her all evening. "She would be over the moon. But are you sure? I mean, hospitals have rules and procedures." "Leave that to me," Jake said with the confidence of someone who had spent years navigating bureaucracy. "Duke and I have some connections. If there's a way to make this happen, we'll find it." That night, Jake made a series of phone calls that would set extraordinary events in motion. He contacted the hospital's patient services department, spoke with the head of their existing therapy dog program, and even reached out to his police chief to discuss temporary reassignment of Duke's duties. By morning, Jake had secured permission for Duke to visit the pediatric oncology ward twice a week. As he hung up from his final call, Duke approached him and rested his massive head on Jake's lap, something the dog had never done before. "We're going to help her through this, buddy," Jake whispered into Duke's fur. "Whatever it takes, we're going to make sure our girl knows she's not fighting this battle alone." Duke's response was a soft whine that sounded remarkably like a promise, a vow that would soon transform not just Lily's fight, but the lives of countless other children who needed to believe in heroes. The automatic doors of Cedar Grove Children's Hospital swooshed open at exactly 2 p.m. on a gray Thursday afternoon, admitting an unusual pair that would soon become legendary in the pediatric oncology ward. Officer Jake Rodriguez walked through the entrance with purposeful strides, his polished boots clicking against the polished linoleum floor. Beside him, Duke padded quietly, wearing his official therapy dog vest, a bright blue garment emblazoned with therapy K-9 that transformed the intimidating German Shepherd into something more approachable, though no less magnificent. Jake had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing for this moment, researching hospital protocols, consulting with the therapy dog coordinator, and most importantly, having serious conversations with Duke about their new mission. Police dogs were trained for many scenarios, but comforting sick children required a different kind of courage, the kind that came from the heart rather than tactical manuals. The pediatric wing buzzed with its usual controlled chaos. Nurses hurried between rooms with clipboards and medication carts. Worried parents huddled in waiting areas, clutching coffee cups like lifelines, and the distinctive sounds of a children's hospital, crying, laughter. The electronic beeps of monitoring equipment created a symphony that was both heartbreaking and hopeful. "First time?" asked Rebecca Martinez, the head of the therapy dog program, approaching them with a warm smile. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the kind of calm presence that came from years of working with both animals and anxious families. "First time here," Jake replied, suddenly feeling nervous in a way that high-speed chases and armed suspects had never made him feel. Duke's done public demonstrations, but this is different. The children have been asking about you all morning, Rebecca said, kneeling down to Duke's level. The German shepherd sat perfectly still as she examined his vest and checked his certification tags. Word travels fast in pediatric wards. Everyone knows that Lily Thompson's special friend is coming to visit. Duke's ears perked up at the mention of Lily's name, and his tail began its familiar gentle wag. Jake felt a surge of pride watching. His partner's immediate positive response. Whatever happened today, Duke was ready. Their first stop was the common area, where a small crowd had already gathered. Children in wheelchairs, some with 4 poles attached, others wearing colorful headscarves or sporting the telltale baldness of chemotherapy, had positioned themselves in anticipation. Parents and nurses lingered nearby, curious about this new addition to the hospital's therapy program. The moment Duke entered the room, magic happened. 8-year-old Marcus, who hadn't smiled since beginning his brain tumor treatment 3 weeks earlier, broke into a grin so wide it seemed to light up the entire room. "He's huge," Marcus whispered in awe, his eyes growing round as saucers. "Can I pet him?" asked Emma, a 6-year-old battling a rare blood disorder, reaching out tentatively from her wheelchair. "Duke loves making new friends," Jake said, guiding his partner to sit beside Emma's chair. The massive dog remained perfectly still as small. Hands reached out to touch his soft fur, some shaking from medication side effects, others weak from treatment, but all filled with wonder. What happened next would be talked about in the hospital for months. Duke seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to sense exactly what each child needed. With Marcus, he was playful, gently taking treats and performing basic commands. That made the boy laugh for the first time since his diagnosis. With quiet 7-year-old Sophia, who was too shy to speak, Duke simply lay down beside her chair and rested his head near her lap, offering silent companionship that spoke louder than words. But the real test came when they reached room 314, Lily's room. Jake's heart clenched when he saw her. The vibrant, energetic 3-year-old who had bounded to the fence every morning was now a small, fragile figure in an oversized hospital gown. Her wild curls were gone, replaced by the smooth scalp that chemotherapy had left behind. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she looked impossibly tiny in the adult-sized hospital bed. But when Lily saw Duke, her face transformed. The weakness, the pain, the fear, all of it melted away, replaced by pure, unadulterated joy. "Duke," she squealed, her voice hoarse but filled with delight. "You found me. I knew you would find me." Duke's response was immediate and heartbreaking. The professional therapy dog training went out the window as he rushed to Lily's bedside, gently resting his massive head on the edge of her bed. Lily's small hands buried themselves in his fur, and she whispered secrets into his ear, just like she had done at the fence, except now her secrets were about scary machines and medicine that tasted yucky, and how much she missed playing in her backyard. "He's been worried about you," Jake said softly, pulling up a chair beside the bed. "He keeps looking for you every morning." "Really?" Lily's eyes, despite their fatigue, sparkled with wonder. "Duke, I've been worried about you too. Are you eating your breakfast? Are you being good for Officer Jake?" Dr. Patricia Chun, Lily's oncologist, had been skeptical about the therapy dog program. As a woman of science, she preferred treatments she could measure and quantify. But watching Lily's vital signs on the monitor as Duke settled beside her bed, she witnessed something that challenged all her medical training. Lily's heart rate, which had been elevated due to anxiety and medication, began to stabilize. Her breathing, previously shallow and rapid, became deeper and more relaxed. Most remarkably, her cortisol levels, stress hormones that interfered with healing, began to drop for the first time since her admission. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Chon murmured to Jake, studying the readouts. Her body is responding to that dog better than some of our anti-anxiety medications. The visit was supposed to last 30 minutes. 2 hours later, Jake and Duke were still in room 314, surrounded by a crowd of children who had gradually migrated from other parts of the ward. Duke had become the center of an impromptu story circle, with Lily, despite her weakness, regaling everyone with tales of Duke's imaginary adventures as a superhero police dog. And then, Lily said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke, Officer Duke caught all the bad guys and saved the whole city. Because he's the bravest dog in the whole world. Duke, lying sprawled on the floor, with children leaning against him from all sides, thumped his tail in acknowledgement. Jake watched in amazement as his partner, who had been trained to be alert and ready for action, remained perfectly calm and gentle as small hands petted him, tugged on his ears, and used him as a living, breathing pillow. As they finally prepared to leave, Lily grabbed Jake's hand with surprising strength. You'll come back, right? Promise me Duke will come back? We'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday, Jake assured her, feeling tears prick his eyes. Duke wouldn't miss it for the world. Walking out of the hospital that evening, Jake knew that their lives had been fundamentally changed. Duke had found a new calling, one that would prove even more important than his police work. They weren't just visiting sick children. They were bringing hope, joy, and healing in ways that medicine alone could never accomplish. Winter arrived early that year, painting Cedar Grove in shades of gray that seemed to mirror the weight settling over the children's hospital. By December, Jake and Duke's twice-weekly visits had evolved into something far beyond their original therapy dog mission. They had become the heartbeat of the pediatric oncology ward, their arrivals anticipated like Christmas morning by children who had precious little to celebrate. The transformation in Duke was nothing short of miraculous. The German shepherd, who once prowled city streets searching for criminals, had discovered his true calling among the smallest, bravest warriors he'd ever encountered. He had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense which children needed play, which needed comfort, and which needed the quiet strength that only a loyal companion could provide. Lily, now 3 months into her treatment, had appointed herself as Duke's official introduction coordinator. Despite the toll chemotherapy had taken on her tiny body, her weight had dropped alarmingly, and her once bright eyes often carried shadows of pain. She insisted on greeting every new patient who joined their unofficial Duke fan club. This is Officer Duke, she would announce with the solemnity of a royal herald, her small hand resting on Duke's head as he sat patiently beside her wheelchair. He's not just any police dog. He's a superhero police dog, and he's here to help us be brave. The children had created an elaborate mythology around Duke's adventures. 10-year-old Carlos, fighting his second round of leukemia, was the primary storyteller. He spun tales of Duke's supernatural powers, how he could smell fear and transform it into courage, how his bark could scare away the monsters that lived in 4 bags, and how his gentle presence could make the worst days bearable. Tell them about the time Duke fought the mean medicine dragon, Lily would request during their afternoon story sessions, her voice barely above a whisper, but her eyes blazing with the kind of fierce joy that refused to be dimmed by circumstance. Carlos would launch into his elaborate narrative, complete with sound effects and dramatic gestures, while Duke lay in the center of their circle, accepting pets and treats, while somehow managing to look appropriately heroic for his starring role in these fantastical adventures. But it was during the medical procedures that Duke's true magic revealed itself. The hospital staff had initially been skeptical about allowing a large dog into treatment rooms, but Dr. Chun had become Duke's most ardent advocate after witnessing his impact on patient compliance and recovery rates. That dog is better than any anxiety medication we have, she told Jake one Thursday afternoon, reviewing charts that showed consistently improved vital signs and faster healing times. Among children who participated in Duke's visits, some of these kids are enduring procedures that would challenge grown adults, and they're doing it with smiles because they want to be brave like Duke. 9-year-old Ashley exemplified this phenomenon. Terrified of needles, she had required sedation for blood draws until Duke began accompanying her to the lab. Now she would march down the hallway holding Duke's leash, chattering to him about how they were both brave warriors going on an important mission. Duke doesn't cry when he gets shots for his police work, she would remind herself as the needle slid into her arm, one hand buried in Duke's fur. If Duke can be brave, so can I. The ripple effects extended far beyond the children. Parents who had been drowning in despair found themselves smiling as they watched their sick children laugh and play. Sarah Thompson, who had barely left Lily's side since the diagnosis, began volunteering with other families, sharing the hope that Duke's visits had restored in her own heart. Before Duke, she told Jake one afternoon while Lily napped with her head pillowed on the dog's side, "I thought Lily's childhood was over. I thought joy was something we'd lost forever." But watching her with Duke, seeing her remember how to be a little girl instead of just a patient ... it saved us all. The ward's nursing staff had embraced Duke as an unofficial team member. Rebecca Martinez had ordered special hospital ID badges for both Jake and Duke, and the dog had his own chart where staff recorded his therapeutic interventions, which children he visited, how long he stayed, and what improvements they observed. Nurse Patricia Williams, a 20-year veteran of pediatric oncology who prided herself on professional detachment, found herself completely charmed by Duke's intuitive responses to her patients. Yesterday, Duke spent 40 minutes with little Tommy, who was having a particularly rough chemo day, she told Jake. A dog just knew that boy needed extra attention. When Tommy finally fell asleep, Duke stayed right there until the treatment was finished. That's not training. That's pure compassion. A Tuesday before Christmas, the children surprised Jake and Duke with a celebration that brought the entire hospital to tears. They had created handmade badges declaring Duke an honorary nurse, an official chief of courage. Lily, wrapped in blankets but absolutely determined to participate, had painted a portrait of Duke wearing a superhero cape, complete with the words "My Hero," written in shaky 3-year-old handwriting. "Duke," she said during the presentation ceremony, her voice thin but unwavering, "you make the scary things not scary anymore. You make the sad things not so sad. And you help us remember that we're not just sick kids. We're brave kids who happen to be fighting really hard battles." Duke accepted his honors with characteristic dignity, sitting perfectly still as children placed handmade medals around his neck and pinned paper badges to his therapy vest. His tail wagged constantly, but his expression remained serious, as if he understood the weight of the responsibility they were placing on his shoulders. That night, as Jake brushed Duke's coat at home, he reflected on the extraordinary journey they had taken together. His partner had evolved from a law enforcement tool into something far more precious, a beacon of hope for families facing their darkest hours. "You know, buddy," Jake said softly, watching Duke's eyes drift closed with contentment, "I think we finally figured out what you were really meant to do with your life." Duke's response was a soft sigh of satisfaction, the sound of a dog who had found his true purpose among the smallest heroes he would ever meet. February 14th, 2024, Valentine's Day, began with a silence so profound it seemed to echo through the walls of Cedar Grove Children's Hospital. For the first time in 4 months, room 314 was still at 2 p.m. when Jake and Duke arrived for their regular Tuesday visit. No excited voice called out their names. No small hands pressed against the doorframe in anticipation. No elaborate plans for Duke's latest superhero mission. Lily lay motionless in her hospital bed, her breathing shallow and labored. The aggressive treatment protocol that had initially shown such promise had stopped working 3 weeks earlier. The cancer, Dr. Chun had gently explained to the family, had become resistant to chemotherapy. They had run out of medical options. Sarah sat beside the bed, holding her daughter's hand while Michael stood by the window, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The room felt heavy with the weight of unspoken goodbyes and the crushing reality that modern medicine, for all its miracles, sometimes simply wasn't enough. Duke approached the bed with unusual caution, his tail still but his eyes alert. He had been sensing something different about Lily for weeks, a change in her scent, a weakness in her movements that went beyond the usual fatigue from treatments. Dogs, Jake knew, could often detect things that humans couldn't, and Duke's recent behavior around Lily had been increasingly protective and gentle. "Hi, Duke," Lily whispered, her voice so soft that Jake had to lean forward to hear it. Her eyes, though sunken and tired, still held that spark of love that had defined their friendship from the very beginning. "I was waiting for you." Duke carefully placed his head on the edge of the bed, and Lily's tiny hand found its way to his fur. For several minutes, they simply stayed like that, the dying child and the dog who had become her dearest friend, sharing a communion that transcended words. "Mommy," Lily said suddenly, turning to Sarah with an urgency that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her failing body. "I need to make Duke a movie. It's very, very important." Sarah's heart clenched. Over the past few days, Lily had been making what the hospice counselor called completion tasks, drawing pictures for her grandparents, picking out special toys to give to other children, and asking to record messages for people who had been important to her short life. "Of course, sweetheart," Sarah replied, retrieving Lily's pink tablet from the bedside table. Her hands trembled as she positioned the device, understanding with terrible clarity that this would likely be her daughter's final gift to her beloved friend. Jake stepped back, giving the family privacy for what he sensed would be an intensely personal moment. But Lily's weak voice stopped him. "Officer Jake," she called out, "you need to stay too. This message is for both of you." Jake returned to his position beside Duke, his throat tight with emotion. He had witnessed many difficult moments in his career, but nothing had prepared him for watching a 3-year-old say goodbye to the world with such grace and courage. "Okay, baby," Sarah said softly, holding the tablet steady despite her shaking. "Hands, whenever you're ready." Lily took a shuddering breath and looked directly into the camera. When she spoke, her voice carried a strength that seemed impossible given her physical condition, as if her spirit was gathering every ounce of energy for these final, precious words. "Hi, Officer Braveheart," she began, using the special nickname she had given Duke during their early hospital visits. "It's me, Lily. I wanted to make you this movie because I have to go on a really big adventure soon, and I can't take you with me this time." Sarah stifled a sob, but kept the camera steady as Lily continued. "I want you to know that you're the best friend I ever had in my whole life. You made me feel so brave when I was scared, and you made me laugh when the medicine made me feel yucky. Remember all our stories about you being a superhero? Well, I think they were all true. You really are a superhero, Duke, because superheroes save people, and you saved me." Jake felt tears streaming down his cheeks as Lily paused to catch her breath before continuing. "I'm not scared about my big adventure because I learned how to be brave from you. And I know you're going to keep helping other kids be brave too, because that's what heroes do. Promise me you'll tell them all about our fence talks and our hospital games, okay?" Duke, as if sensing the importance of the moment, moved closer to the bed and gently licked Lily's hand. "I think Duke is promising," Lily whispered, smiling for the first time in days. "Officer Jake, Thank you for sharing Duke with me. Take really good care of him, and tell him every day that Lily loves him forever and always." She turned her attention back to the camera for her final words. "Duke, I'm going to go somewhere really beautiful, and I'll be watching for you. Someday, when you're old and tired from being a hero for so many kids, you can come find me, and we can play in the biggest backyard ever, with no fences and no scary medicine. Until then, be good, be brave, and remember that you made one little girl the happiest she could ever be." The recording ended with Lily blowing a kiss toward the camera, her small hand forming a heart shape in the air, a gesture that would soon be seen by millions of people around the world. "That was perfect, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, clutching the tablet like a precious treasure. Lily smiled weakly and reached for Duke one more time. "I'm tired now," she said simply, "but I'm not sad anymore." Duke helped me remember that love is the strongest thing in the whole world. As if understanding that their time together was ending, Duke remained perfectly still while Lily's hand rested in his fur. Her breathing gradually became more peaceful, and her grip loosened as she drifted into the sleep that would carry her gently toward her final adventure. The message, lasting just 1 minute and 47 seconds, contained a lifetime's worth of love, courage, and wisdom from a child, had faced the unthinkable with extraordinary grace. Lily Thompson passed away at 3:47 a.m. on February 17th, surrounded by love, her small hand still resting on a photograph of Duke that Sarah had placed beside her on the hospital bed. The death certificate would list the cause as complications from acute lymphoblastic leukemia, but everyone who knew her understood that Lily had simply completed her earthly mission of teaching the world about unconditional love and extraordinary courage. Jake received the call at 4:15 a.m. Sarah's voice, hoarse from crying, but somehow steady with purpose, delivered the news he had been dreading for weeks. "She's gone, Jake. Our brave little girl is gone." Duke, lying on his bed in the corner of Jake's bedroom, lifted his head the moment Jake hung up the phone. The German shepherd approached slowly, pressing his warm body against Jake's legs, as if sensing the devastating news that words hadn't yet conveyed. They sat together in the pre-dawn darkness, two friends grieving the loss of the little girl who had changed both their lives forever. The funeral 3 days later drew hundreds of people, hospital staff who had fallen in love with Lily's infectious spirit, neighbors who had been touched by her friendship with Duke, police officers from Jake's department who had heard the story, and families from the pediatric ward whose children had been inspired by Lily's courage. Duke, wearing his dress uniform collar for the solemn occasion, sat perfectly still beside Jake throughout the service, as if understanding the gravity of saying goodbye. During the reception, Sarah approached Jake with Lily's pink tablet clutched in her hands like a sacred relic. "I've watched her message to Duke probably 100 times, she said, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "Every time, I'm amazed by her strength. She was 3 years old, Jake, and she faced death with more grace than most adults face ordinary challenges. The world needs to see what real courage looks like. Are you sure?" Jake asked gently, understanding the magnitude of what Sarah was suggesting. "Once something goes on the internet, ... Lily always wanted to help other kids be brave," Sarah interrupted. "This is how she can keep doing that, even now. Would you? Would you help me share it?" That evening, Jake worked with the Cedar Grove Police Department's social media coordinator to craft a post that would honor Lily's memory while sharing her message of hope. The accompanying text was simple but powerful. 3-year-old Lily Thompson battled pediatric cancer with extraordinary courage, finding strength in her friendship with K-9 Officer Duke. Before she passed away, Lily recorded this final message. For her beloved friend. Her words remind us all that love truly is the strongest force in the world. Rest in peace, brave little warrior. Hashtag LilyStrong, hashtag pediatric cancer awareness, hashtag unconditional love. The post went live at 8 p.m. on February 20th. By midnight, it had been shared 10,000 times. By morning, the number had jumped to 100,000. Within 48 hours, Lily's message had reached over 10 million people across every social media platform imaginable. The response was overwhelming and immediate. Comments flooded in from around the world. Parents sharing their own stories of childhood cancer battles. Healthcare workers expressing how Lily's courage inspired their daily work. And millions of people simply moved to tears by a little girl's profound wisdom. Celebrity endorsements began appearing within days. Ellen DeGeneres shared the video with her 77 million followers, writing, "This little angel reminds us what true bravery looks like." Oprah Winfrey posted it with the comment, "Some souls shine so brightly, they illuminate the world even after they're gone." The Rock shared it with the simple but powerful message, real strength, real love, real inspiration. News outlets picked up the story with unprecedented speed. CNN, NBC, ABC, and Fox News all featured Lily's message in their evening broadcasts. International media followed suit. The BBC, CBC, and networks across Europe, Asia, and Australia shared the story of the little girl and her police dog friend. Within a week, Lily's message had been translated into dozens of languages and viewed in over 150 countries. But the most powerful responses came from the families fighting similar battles. Children's hospitals across the country began reporting increased requests for therapy dog programs. Parents of sick children reached out to share how Lily's words had given them strength to face another day. Other young patients recorded their own messages of hope, creating a movement of courage that spread throughout pediatric wards worldwide. Dr. Chun, Lily's oncologist, found herself fielding calls from medical conferences, requesting presentations about the therapeutic impact of the Duke and Lily friendship. In 30 years of medicine, she told Jake during one of these conversations, "I've never seen anything create such widespread inspiration for healing and hope." The Cedar Grove Police Department was inundated with media requests and interview opportunities. Jake, initially overwhelmed by the attention, realized that every interview was an opportunity to honor Lily's memory and promote pediatric cancer research. Duke, now recognized as the most famous therapy dog in America, handled the spotlight with his characteristic dignity, sitting patiently through photo shoots and news segments, as if he understood his role in carrying forward Lily's mission. Corporate sponsors began reaching out with donation offers. Within 3 months, over $2 million had been raised for pediatric cancer research in Lily's name. Children's hospitals across the nation received funding for new therapy dog programs, medical equipment, and family support services, all inspired by 47 seconds of a dying child's final message to her best friend. But perhaps the most touching tributes came from other children. Kids around the world began making their own messages of bravery, sharing stories of how Lily had inspired them to face their fears, help others, or simply choose kindness over cruelty. Elementary schools created Lily's Kindness Clubs, and libraries hosted Officer Duke reading hours, where therapy dogs helped children with literacy while sharing Lily's story. Sarah found herself transformed from a grieving mother into an advocate and spokesperson for childhood cancer awareness. Lily always said she wanted to help other kids be brave. She told a packed auditorium at a fundraising gala 6 months after her daughter's death. "I never imagined her voice would reach so far, but I think she did." Somehow, she knew her message would give other families the strength to keep fighting. As Jake watched the endless stream of tributes, donations, and expressions of love flowing in from around the world, he realized that Lily had achieved something extraordinary. A 3-year-old girl from a small town had managed to remind the entire planet that love Courage and kindness were humanity's greatest superpowers, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful messages. 1 year to the day after Lily's final message touched the world, Cedar Grove transformed into a place of pilgrimage. February 17, 2025, marked not just the anniversary of a little girl's passing, but the dedication of something unprecedented. A memorial that would ensure her legacy of love and courage would inspire generations to come. Lily's Legacy Memorial Park occupied the space where the old Cedar Grove Elementary playground once stood. The town council, moved by the global response to Lily's story and the flood of donations from around the world, had unanimously voted to create something extraordinary. The centerpiece was a life-sized bronze sculpture that captured the essence of the friendship that had started it all. A 3-year-old girl reaching through a chain-link fence to touch the nose of a magnificent German shepherd, both figures frozen in a moment of pure, unconditional love. The sculptor, Maria Santos, had donated her services after being moved to tears by Lily's message. She had spent months perfecting every detail: the joy in Lily's bronze face, the gentle patience in Duke's expression, even the small stuffed elephant tucked under Lily's arm. But the most touching detail was barely visible: tiny bronze dandelions, scattered around the base of the statue, representing all the flowers Lily had picked for Duke during their fence-line meetings. As the dedication ceremony began, over 3,000 people filled the park. Representatives from children's hospitals across the country stood beside local residents who had watched Lily grow up. Television crews from major networks positioned their cameras to capture what many were calling the most important memorial dedication in decades. But at the center of it all sat Jake Rodriguez and Duke, now 8 years old, and bearing the distinguished gray around his muzzle that marked him as a senior dog. Duke had changed profoundly in the year since Lily's death. While he continued his therapy work with the same dedication and gentleness that had made him famous, those who knew him best could see the deeper wisdom in his eyes. He seemed to understand that he carried the responsibility of honoring Lily's memory with every child he comforted, every family he helped heal. Sarah Thompson, now the executive director of the Lily and Duke Foundation, approached the podium with the same quiet strength that had carried her through the darkest year of her life. Over the past 12 months, she had transformed her grief into purpose, traveling across the country to speak at medical conferences, fundraising galas, and anywhere else people needed to hear about the power of hope. Lily always believed that love was the strongest thing in the world. Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly across the hushed crowd. What she couldn't have imagined was how far her love would travel, or how many lives it would touch. This memorial isn't just about remembering my daughter. It's about continuing her mission to help children everywhere find the courage to face their fears. The foundation Sarah had established had already accomplished miraculous things. 67 hospitals now had fully funded therapy dog programs inspired by the Duke and Lily partnership. Over $5 million had been raised for pediatric cancer research, leading to 3 breakthrough treatment protocols that were saving lives every month. The Lily's Brave Kids Network connected families facing childhood cancer worldwide, providing support, resources, and most importantly, hope. But perhaps the most remarkable development was the Duke Academy, a specialized training program for therapy dogs working in pediatric settings. Located just outside Cedar Grove, the facility trained dogs and their handlers using techniques developed from studying Duke's intuitive responses to sick children. Graduates of the program were now working in children's hospitals across North America, Europe, and Australia. Michael Thompson, who had struggled with overwhelming grief in the months after Lily's death, found his purpose in designing and building the memorial park's interactive elements. Children could walk through a courage garden where bronze plaques shared stories of young heroes facing medical challenges. A friendship circle featured benches where families could sit and share their own stories of hope and healing. The ceremony's most emotional moment came when Dr. Patricia Chun took the stage. The oncologist who had initially been skeptical about therapy dogs had become one of their most passionate advocates. Her research on the Duke-Lily effect, now taught in medical schools worldwide. Lily Thompson taught us that healing isn't just about medicine and procedures, Dr. Chun said, wiping tears from her eyes. She showed us that love, friendship, and courage can be just as powerful as any treatment we prescribe. Because of her, we approach pediatric care differently now. We see the whole child, not just the disease. We understand that sometimes the most important therapy comes with 4 legs and a wagging tail. As the formal ceremony concluded, Duke rose from his place beside Jake and walked slowly toward the bronze statue. The crowd fell silent as the aging German Shepherd approached his metallic counterpart, sniffing carefully at the bronze, Lily's outstretched hand. Then, in a gesture that brought tears to thousands of eyes, Duke sat down beside the statue and rested his head against the bronze fence, exactly as he had done so many mornings in the Thompsons' backyard. Jake joined his partner, kneeling beside Duke and running his hand through the gray-flecked fur. "She's proud of you, buddy," he whispered. "Look at everything you've accomplished in her honor." Duke's response was a soft whine that somehow conveyed both sadness and contentment, the sound of a dog who understood that his greatest mission was to carry forward the love of a little girl who had seen him not as a working animal, but as a hero. As the sun set on the dedication day, families continued to visit the memorial, leaving flowers, toys, and handwritten notes at the base of the statue. Children who had never known Lily personally spoke to her bronze image as if she were an old friend, sharing their fears and hopes with a little girl who had shown the world that bravery wasn't the absence of fear, it was choosing love in spite of it. Duke continued his therapy work for 2 more years, touching hundreds of additional lives before retiring at age 10 to live peacefully with Jake. Even in retirement, he would visit the memorial park regularly, always sitting in the same spot beside Lily's statue, as if maintaining a vigil for his forever friend. When Duke passed away peacefully in his sleep at age 12, his ashes were scattered in the memorial garden, according to his will. A final reunion with the 3-year-old girl who had taught him that the greatest heroes are those who choose to love unconditionally, even when their hearts are breaking. The bond between a dying child and a police dog had grown into something eternal, a legacy of love that would inspire courage, kindness, and hope for generations to come. Lily's message had indeed traveled further than anyone could have imagined, proving that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most powerful truths, and that love, as she had promised, truly is the strongest thing in the world.